Hello everyone and welcome back to the Locked In podcast. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Richard.
Yeah, more transfer news. Somehow Liverpool have managed to sell Darwin Núñez and I don't think they've lost money.
I don't know because the structure of the initial deal, so I don't know how much they had actually paid and how much was left to be paid.
Well, I didn't realise it was 3 years ago that he joined. It doesn't feel like it's been that long, but he joined in June 2022.
Yes, because he hasn't really done anything. I think it's probably fair to say, apart from missed a lot of goals.
I think it's 40 goals in 140 some appearances I think he scored.
It's just not good. And he was so rated. He looked such a deadly striker and then just couldn't hit a barn door with a machine gun.
Yeah, I mean, for how highly touted he was and to be fair, how well he did in that league the season they signed him. I know that, as with every player that's ever existed, Man United were linked with him, and I did like the look of him. But, yeah, I think they've done well. They obviously have made a mistake, but they've still managed to... I think the deal's only worth about £45 million, something like that.
I believe so. I did just have a look. It was, I think it's like 46.2 fixed, and then 10 mil in add-ons. But you know, it's Saudi league. You never know what those add-ons are. It could be win the league. It could be top goal scorer. Yeah. So I don't know how likely the trigger is on them, but I'm pretty sure they bought him for. I think the total deal was like 75. When they bought him, it was big, but there was quite a lot of that would have been add-ons. So you'd have to see where they're at with that, but they've done very well this transfer window. Annoyingly,
yeah. I mean, I said it on a previous episode, not with you, but with Dan, that they've done well and they've improved on what was already the best team in the league.
It's dangerous, isn't it?
It is if you're not a Liverpool fan.
But I still think, like we were discussing, with some of the other transfers, the other teams, that there have been some big ones. Man City have been quiet.
I think they've made clever signings, but yeah, they
did a lot in January as well, though, didn't they?
They
last
spent
season,
like 200 million in January, and apparently that Nico Gonzalez they signed is already wanting to leave.
I don't blame him. He
Well,
wants to play, and I like that in someone.
Tierney Reinders as well, haven't they? So.
Yeah, but I think there's still time. I think there's 3 weeks left.
It's normally the first week of September that it ends. It's like the second or third or whatever it ends up being.
So still time for some big moves to happen.
I do think that any team that leaves it this late to start making big signings are panicking.
Yeah,
and I know that from experience as a Man United fan. You look at Anthony was right at the end of the window. I think the only sensible one that I can remember in the last few years that was done late was De Ligt and Mazraoui. But I think that took so long because they were trying to do 2 deals at once.
Yeah. I always remember the famous Spurs deadline day things. We always had that rush of deadline days. Obviously, we signed Van der Vaart from Real Madrid. That was, great. What a moment! What a player.
Was Bale a deadline day one?
What, from Southampton?
No. When you sold
him,
I've got a feeling that was
it could have been. It was one of the weirdest transfer situations because we spent all of the money before we had sold him.
Yeah, very well spent, I must say.
There was a couple. Don't get me wrong. Ericsson was in that. So that there was some other questionable ones in that.
I think that's an understatement.
Yeah, I mean Chadley was one that was signed in that. I think Lamella also come through that. Lamella I've always loved.
Was good on his day.
That Rabona goal that he scored against Arsenal, nutmegging Partey. That just lives long in the memory, doesn't it? Any goal against Arsenal normally does. But, so I think, the teams that look like they're going to be winning this year in the transfer market are going to be Liverpool. And I hate to say it, if if you guys can come in clutch, you can finish it up. You finish Sesko. Donnarumma conversations as we was chatting earlier. Something like that, and then one or two, maybe a midfielder, that Brighton lad. Something like that. As I said, I don't know much about him. I don't really remember seeing him last season, but
I honestly think that if they can get, doesn't have to be Donnarumma, but if they get a goalkeeper over the line and Belieber over the line, Belieber, as we're recording this, the news only came out last night, so it's still very, very fresh. So it may have progressed a bit more by the time you're watching this, or have gone completely dead. We don't know.
One or the other.
I think if they can get that over the line and they get a goalkeeper, whether it be this Lamens guy from Belgium or whether it be someone like Donnarumma, I would put my neck on the line and say that is a perfect transfer window. I know the amount of money spent is obscene, but if you'd have told me 3 months ago when we were having this Jim Ratcliffe thing where he was like, they're going to be out of money at Christmas and all this shit, that they'd spend, what if Belieber and Donnarumma go through over £300 million on transfers,
and
I'd have laughed in your face. And if you'd have told me it was on Cunha, in Mbumo, if you'd have Sesko, if you'd have told me it was these players, I would have laughed at you, because I was convinced that it was going to be a season of free transfers. We'd retain Johnny Evans, we'd sign Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Jamie Vardy, because that was looking like a real possibility at one point.
I remember we spoke about Calvert-Lewin, didn't we? And we were like, is this where we're at? Is this where you had got to in looking for a striker, was someone of that ilk, as opposed to someone like Sesko, and obviously there's still debates, there's still question marks over him. He hasn't done it enough, and he's had a few good seasons, but he is 21, 22.
He had overall better numbers, bar assists. He had better numbers than Ekitike last season.
Yeah. And I think
I know they're paying a little bit more than what
74 million, but it's not going to be 74 million in one hit. There's going to be a portion of that that's going to be add-ons, and whether that's 5 million in bonus that brings it down to just under 70. I think you're talking about a 22-year-old man that's got probably 8-10 solid years ahead of him. Do you know what I mean? And he just looks quality. He's big, strong.
When you compare it to Ollie Watkins, who was the other potential, you've got 5 or 6 years of Sesko, as long as he maintains or gets better, of him holding his value. You've got realistically 3 years of Ollie Watkins until he starts to drop like a stone. Because it's very rare that players like that who rely on pace, and he does rely on pace, no matter what anyone says, he relies on pace. Once that starts to go, they fall completely out of favour. And that isn't going to happen with Sesko. And I think that, originally this was Arsenal's top target. This was who they wanted. This was the one that they thought was going to put them over the line to win the league. They didn't get him because they didn't want to pay it. And Sesko never, ever came out and said that he wanted to join Arsenal. That's not the case with Manchester United. He's come out and said, I want to join Man United. And that is a massive vote of confidence from the point of a Man United fan.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was laughable that a couple of months ago, I think it was Omar Barada or Ratcliffe or someone, said that they only want to sign players who want to come to Man United. They don't want to try and force people through the door anymore. And I like that, because that's when you overpay, and that's when you get people like Di Maria, and where they don't want to play. So what they've done is they've prioritised these signings, very, very high quality signings, but they've waited for the player to come out and express the interest of playing for Man United. This is what happened with Cunha, it's what happened with Mbumo, it's what's happening with Sesko. So I think that they're going back to an old philosophy that Sir Alex Ferguson used to follow. Sir Alex Ferguson was the master of picking. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of skill, because obviously you can see them week in, week out in the Premier League, but picking out the players from the middle to lower Premier League teams, picking them out of those, and what it does is it strengthens your team and it weakens the opposition. So it is a brilliant transfer strategy, especially with where Man United are looking like they're going to finish. If they maintain, they're going to be a mid-table team. I don't think that's the case. When you've weakened all the teams that were around them by plucking out their best players and putting them all in one team, Premier League proven for the most part, and then, and a team that's hungry and a team that wants to play for the badge.
So
I think you are creating a perfect storm here, and I don't want to sound delusional, but I am going to a little bit.
we're going to have to. What is your prediction of a finish currently, and then if you get the final signings that...
I think if we assume that Sesko is going to happen, because it looks more likely than not likely.
It's more done. Romano said it was.
I think you can push for 5th.
You heard it here first. Do we agree with that?
If everything goes well, you don't get a battery of injuries, you don't get anything happening, I think 5th is a realistic
option.
Yeah. And I don't think that the signing of Donnarumma and Belieber is going to push us for a title. I would never ever say that. We are miles and miles and miles behind the likes of
Do you
Liverpool
think you're
and
solid
City.
enough goalkeeper wise, for a 5th place with Onana in the net?
If they get 5th place, it will be in spite of Onana as opposed to because of it.
Yeah.
But I don't like Onana. I never have liked Onana. I thought they should have kept hold of De Gea. I
100%.
think you had what only was 2 or 3 years previous, probably the best keeper in the world. The season that he left, he won the Golden Glove. So he was provably the best keeper in the league that season.
And has great passing.
And that was his issue. He wasn't very good off the floor. I know that's changed. I know that his pass accuracy was better. That was the style that Ten Hag wanted to play. The style didn't work. It didn't work in the Premier League at all. And the problem is in order to have that, and Onana, his distribution is quite good. He does tend to go for the Hollywood pass, but he is, for a goalkeeper, quite accurate at said Hollywood pass. It's who he was passing to that was the main issue. But I think that giving up so many fundamentals of modern day goalkeeping in order to have that is a problem.
100%. If you can't save a shot, it doesn't matter how well you can pass a ball.
It's not about saving the shot, it's how you save it.
Yeah.
I spoke about it before, and this is the clip that got the most views we've ever had on a short was me ranting about Onana, because this was in the midst of the season when it was looking a genuine possibility that we were going to get relegated, and it was just constant of him. He would save the shot, but he'd palm it straight to the fucking striker.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's such a. It's one of the first things you learn as a keeper is do not put the ball back into danger, and it just seems to be a weekly occurrence for him. He doesn't have the fundamentals of goalkeeping, which is why I don't think they need. I don't think it. Well, I think they do need Donnarumma, but I don't think it would have to be Donnarumma.
Yeah.
For it to be an improvement.
Just a solid keeper.
I think this Lamens guy. I'm not going to pretend I've ever heard of him before he was mentioned in a headline with Man United. But I've looked him up since, and he just looks like a very good, solid, fundamental keeper.
How old is he?
Young. 23, 24.
Oh, okay, very young.
So very young for a keeper.
Yeah.
But equally, I think that if for whatever reason this doesn't go through, I think you give a couple of the kids a go.
Because I did see, I was looking at the new FIFA, and that's something they've addressed in that, is the goalkeeping. And the amount of times ball gets palmed out back into play.
Yeah, I know.
And yeah, it is just scary. It's one thing that I, have always quite liked it in goalkeepers is someone that can just, get it out. I think Evie Martinez at Villa has always been great at that. Just a strong hand. If he's not going to catch it, it's bang. It's out of the way. It's out for a corner. It's, away from the 6-yard box instead of dropping it in there for anyone worth their salt to run in and tap it in. But
yeah, because it makes the defence look bad as well.
Yeah.
Because if the defence are having to drop to cover the keeper that they don't trust, you then leave these enormous gaps, which is what you're seeing. And especially when you've got centre-backs. Now, I think he did very well last season, but Maguire, for example, has no recovery pace whatsoever.
Yeah.
So he has to drop because he can't rely on Onana.
Mm-hmm.
So it ruins the dynamic of the team. And what I loved that I was seeing in pre-season was that team was finally playing like it should, and you could see the system working. I mean, there was flashes of it last season. There was flashes of
Moments,
seeing it work, but it was few and far between. But yeah, I think in pre-season you can see it, and I know it's pre-season. I know, but they have played a lot of Premier League teams, and they haven't lost any. They've drawn 2 and they've won 1. But these were teams that were battering them last season. I mean, Bournemouth, for example, they beat them twice. They beat them home and away last season, and Man United ruined them 4-1. It was a demolition job. Again, pre-season, I know. I'm not going to read into it too much, but I think
that's all you can judge it on, though, isn't it? That's what's going to be the form that runs into the season, into the first game, and everything like that. So, it's a step in the right direction. I think, especially when you look at Amorim, is that it's the one thing that he never had was a pre-season.
Yeah.
He didn't have that, and he didn't have that time to work, to sort things out. So, I think now that he's actually had the time away from, speculation, away from week in, week out of getting battered and having to deal with that, of just working with the players and saying, this is what we're going to do. Now I'm getting a group of players that I want to work with, and that are, these are my starters, these are my
system.
Yeah,
he's buying players that fit his system, which he didn't have before.
He
was shoehorning people into all sorts of positions.
The only problem that you will have now is now he's got to go and do it.
Yeah, 100%. But and now the only thing is that I don't agree with is the Man United fan base. This is, I think, the worst thing about them. I'm included to some extent, but I think I'm a bit more level-headed than the average one. Is as soon as things start going bad, they start pointing fingers. Mm-hmm. Whether it be at the players, whether it be at the manager, whether it be at the only one I think you can point the finger at most of the time is the owners. But what I don't want to happen is that they go on a run of 3 or 4 losses, which will happen. It's Man United. It always happens. They'll lose some silly games this season, and but the thing is, a level-headed Man United fan who's seen and watched Man United for the best part of 20 years, that always happens. It's going to happen. Exactly. The difference is after if Spurs went on a 4 or 5 loss run, apart from last season, you're not immediately going sack the manager. Sack the manager. He's shit. Amorim out, because Amorim, I think, was the most level-headed and the most sort of composed manager to go into an absolute shit show. That club, that was an impossible job. And I think
there was a lot of egos. There was a lot of individual components that needed to be changed and worked on.
That was the biggest problem.
And that's it. And it's like, Rome wasn't built in a day. Things don't happen overnight. And 1, 2, 3 bad results doesn't make it a bad team or a bad manager.
No.
People forget that, and they have one instance, and they go, someone misses a chance. Well, he's now a rubbish striker. It doesn't work like that. Judge at the end of the season and give people chance.
But this is the other thing. Is I know this has been. We'll move on in a minute, but we're on Man United, so let's talk about him.
He's on a roll.
Like Rasmus Højlund. Let's talk about him now. No one that has been blessed by God with the gift of sight would say that last season was a good season for him. It wasn't. It was a terrible season for him, but it was a terrible season for every single member of that team. I think the only one that could maybe hold his head up was Bruno. But at the end of the day,
tantrums.
They finished 15th. That's nothing to be proud of. But what I think is a fundamental problem with the world of football at the minute is people's perception of strikers has been skewed by people like Mbappe, Haaland. These generational talents that are scoring 30 goals a season at 20 years old. That is not normal. When you look at a lot of the top strikers, whether it be Drogba, Aguero, Torres, they weren't striking these sort of numbers until their mid-20s. When they are in their prime, they are established. They've played a lot of first-team football.
And understand their role, their play, how they're going to utilise their strengths.
Rasmus Højlund is 22 years old. He's nowhere near his prime. But because modern football fans want that instant gratification. They want a player to come into the club and immediately be good. I think it knocks the confidence of so many players, and
it's a pressure.
Unfairly puts them in a bracket of a flop immediately. Now, I think if Højlund, continues to progress, and he hits 25, 26, I think he could be a fucking good striker in the Premier League. He has that instinct.
He's got good attributes, he's got physicality about him, he's got a bit of pace.
He's lightning quick. He's so quick.
And, he can clearly put, what was it, his first season at United, 14 goals, something like that, I think?
I think in all competitions, I think it was 21.
Yeah, 14 league goals.
He was 19 years old.
So he can obviously find the back of a net, and I don't think you necessarily lose that. Some strikers, for whatever reason, go on runs where they can't do anything. We've had it, as we said, about with Darwin. He's obviously going through one of those tricky bits, still getting goals, still putting the ball in the net, but not to the numbers that he was. And I think, sometimes you just almost need to take the pressure off of them and just let them develop, let them learn, and just support them through it, because it's like, no one, it's very rare. There's probably, 5 players in the world that are posting consistent 30, 40 goal numbers every season. And they're the people we're talking about that are the best players in the world. Not everyone's going to do that.
Not everyone needs to be the best player in the world.
Ollie Watkins, he doesn't get 20 goals every year. League goals.
But look at where he
and we still say that he's a great striker and a great option for England and that, and he's not posting those numbers.
He came good.
Yeah.
He came good at 25 or 26.
Is when he really started to flourish, and I think,
no one was calling him a flop at Brentford when he was in his early 20s. They just realised that he hadn't developed yet. But look at what he's developed into.
I think the problem you've got with United as well, and especially the Rasmus situation, is that you don't have another striker.
No.
So all of that weight, and it's like, if you don't score, it's his fault. Yep. If you do score, well, he should have done that anyway. Do you know what I mean? There's no balance there. Whereas, when you've got 3 strikers, 4 strikers in your squad, that burden gets passed around a bit and someone picks up the slack, and, there just wasn't goals coming in that United team, and it was instant finger point. It's Rasmus.
The Man United striker's job has been a complete graveyard shift, I'd say, for the last 10, 11 years. You look at the calibre of strikers that we've had.
Cavani,
Ibra, Ronaldo, Lukaku. All these what you would call top-level strikers. Yes, a couple of them were on the decline, but still, you put Cristiano Ronaldo up front for that team. Yes, he scored, I think, 28 goals that season, which at 37 is insane in the Premier League. But even he looked like he was struggling. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It is a complete graveyard shift because the team has not been synergised with a proper system that provides ample opportunities to a striker.
Yeah.
You look at some of the conversion rates of even these top boys. Like I was looking at Isak and Ekatike and stuff like that the other day. Their conversion rate, even on the top end, for people like Isak, is only about 18%.
Yeah,
so that's just under 1 in 5 shots he has goes in. Now, Isak is having 4 shots a game. So by that conversion rate, he scores just under a goal a game. A goal every a goal a game. Yeah, that's what I mean. But if you look at Rasmus, his conversion rate was, I think, 7% or something like that, really bad. So 1 in 10 shots, but the guy's only getting 2 shots a game.
Yeah.
If you had the numbers, if you brought the numbers up to the Isak numbers, where he's having that, then suddenly he's at 0.14.
Yeah, it starts being one every other game, and
it's one every other game or 1 every 3 games. Then it becomes. But the thing is, the numbers are there. The service is not there for the Man United strikers. And when you're relying on a 22-year-old and a 17-year-old to lead your line, something's gone wrong. When they're not Haaland and Mbappe. Do you know what I mean? You can't do it. You need that sort of father figure.
Yeah. You just need someone that's been there, done it, seen it, been in the trenches, has weathered a storm or two, and someone like that understands that it ebbs and flows, and you in form, out of form, still do your job, still train well, still put yourself out there. You start having players like that around them, that it only increases, the ability of these players. And I think, obviously you get Sesko and, two young strikers out there. You hope that Sesko continues his form, keeps going, starts banging some goals. I
think he's got all the attributes for the Premier League. He's big, he's strong,
I love
he's
him.
quick.
I like it.
I think he's a great player.
6'5", man. Do you know what I mean? You're a handful, and
he's built like Haaland. I'm not saying he's as good as Haaland, but he's built like Haaland. And Haaland's physique in the Premier League works. Do you know what I mean? It did come under a bit of scrutiny last season. He was injured, wasn't he?
And he just didn't quite hit those heights that he had hit before. But I think, I think with Sesko and everything that I've seen of him, which isn't, loads and loads, but in Champions League and in other bits and pieces, he's just got that appetite. He just goes and runs and in behind, and it looks like he can finish a ball. So I'm annoyed that you're getting him if you do get it through the line. I don't want you to, but we'll stick with our Solanke, and we'll be very happy with old Dom, big old Dom up there.
And the other thing I wanted to talk about is what the hell is going on at Newcastle?
They don't look like, weirdly, they don't look like anyone wants to do business with them.
No, and I don't understand it really. You'd think that it would be quite an attractive
opportunity.
Yeah,
we saw it with Man City, didn't we? I mean, when Man City obviously took over and the money flowed into City. I mean, I don't know how old you'd have been then.
10, 12?
Yeah, it was weird because obviously like the big one was Robinho. I
remember that because I remember the commentary saying
32 million or whatever that they spent on him, which back then was crazy.
Yeah, that's like 120 million.
It was crazy money, and the fact that they could get that kind of player was mad. And it was like, but everyone was like, well yeah, I'll go there. I want to be part of the making this journey and making this great. And you've got Newcastle that are off the back of just winning a trophy. You've got, St James Park is a huge stadium.
I love St James
Park. It's such a theatre up north, isn't it, of a stadium. And I think, Shearer always spoke about it, that the atmosphere and the fan base that you have at Newcastle is up there in the Premier League. You can look at Liverpool, but it's a bit fickle, isn't it, with those fans? But it's a very true fan base at Newcastle, and I just thought that there would be more people because the money's there. They can compete on wages. They can pay these transfer fees now.
I genuinely think that there's a few things about it that I think all add up in a especially a European footballer's mind, because obviously they're going for the big boys. They went for Sesko, they went for Mbumo, they went for Cunha actually.
Yeah.
And obviously they've all chosen Man United, and I think that there's a certain few things. One is the location, because you are in the arse end of nowhere in Newcastle. You're not near Manchester, you're not near London, do you know what I mean? You're not near any of these big cities that footballers love to hang out in. Newcastle's a lovely city, nothing against Newcastle at all, but I think you've got to look at it from an outside perspective. If I was a footballer thinking about going to Italy, you want to be somewhere near Rome, Milan, Naples. Do you know what I mean? And 100%. That goes Roma, AC Milan, Napoli.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You look at those teams because, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with this place, but if like Venezia came in, I don't know whether, I think that's Venice, isn't it? So that's a bad choice. But
it's flooding, so
Well, let pick Lecce or something like that. I don't know where they're based, but that if you've got a choice between Lecce and Roma, from my point of view, you want to live in Rome. Do Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that that's part of the problem. I think the other problem is that they are very reluctant to sell their players. And I think that because they haven't established themselves properly in the Champions League and stuff like that, they haven't really competed in the Champions League properly. And when I say competed, I know they've competed, but I mean that, they don't look like winning it.
Yeah.
They don't
or having a run.
Yeah, exactly.
A good show.
I think that a lot of players still see it as a stepping stone club. Do you know what I mean? You go there with the intent of going to a Liverpool, a Man United, a Chelsea, but they don't see themselves as that. So they're making it difficult for players to come in, learn their craft in the Premier League, and then go somewhere else. They want to be that end club, and they're not there yet.
No.
So I think a mixture of the placement, that, and they can't spend the money they need to because of PSR. Because the problem is they have a very, very, very small
income
and global appeal.
Yeah.
They're very, very well loved in Newcastle. Mm-hmm. But it's very rare. You'll see, there was a period of time where there was a lot of Newcastle fans in France. I don't know if you remember. They basically bought the whole French national team. They had Cabaye, they had Johan Gourcuff.
Yeah.
Not Gourcuff. I can't remember his name, but Emmanuel Rivière. They had Remy Cabella. They had loads and loads of French players. And I remember going to France that year, and there was loads of people wearing Newcastle shirts. But they don't have that global appeal. They don't have, it's very rare that you'd see, a young football player from Africa wearing that. You do see them wearing Liverpool shirts or City shirts or Man United shirts, or do you know what I mean? They don't have that eminence, that global appeal that
if you went to, it's always interesting, isn't it? If you've ever been to, some of these smaller places around the world, or these different sort of continents, different countries, and, it's like they know everyone in the Man United team. Yeah. They know all of the... You never hear them talk about a Newcastle team or, maybe Leicester after they won the league. Obviously, that probably got them some recognition. But I think, I see it as it's a big, big struggle for Newcastle, and I think they are probably shitting themselves a little bit at the minute if Isak does go.
Because where do they go? Where do they turn? Who do they sign?
How do you go? I mean, do they look at getting a fucking Jamie Vardy? I mean, is that going to be... Or do they look at a Watkins? Or,
I don't think that fixes your issue. Do you know what I mean?
It's a bandage.
If you're selling a player for 120 million or whatever they were going to end up getting for him, you want to bring in someone who's going to make your team better.
Or at least...
The problem is you're selling probably the most informed striker in the world. Mm-hmm. And I just think that whatever they do, at best, it will be a sidestep, which doesn't help with any of the things I've just listed.
I mean, we had it when we sold Kane. When we sold Kane, we knew that you don't replace that quality of striker. No. You can't. And, with Isak, fair enough, he's had, I don't think he's been hugely prolific his whole career. I think he did well back in Spain at Sociedad, I believe it was, wasn't it? Yeah, did well. He's done, well at Newcastle and that. But, obviously he's only been at Newcastle, for 2 years, 3 years, something like that. But to try and, sign him, you want big boy strikers, and I don't think they're around. They're not, I don't think there's a queue of good quality 20-goal a season strikers.
But there was at the beginning of the season, at the beginning of the transfer
window.
There
was a few.
There was a lot of strikers that were on the market. So you look at who's moved. So Sesko is going to move.
Yeah.
Gyökeres.
Yeah.
Osimhen.
Yeah. He went back, didn't he, to Galatasaray?
Yeah, but he was available.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
A lot of money.
And there was a couple more.
Yeah.
I'm forgetting, but. Well, you even look at people like João Pedro from Brighton and people like that. There was a lot of opportunity to sign strikers, but I think that they were almost expecting Isak to stay.
I think his head was turned when Liverpool
100%.
went
I mean,
formal.
who wouldn't?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Unless you were...
I suppose Ekitike would have been available as well, wouldn't he? As he moved to
was the other
Liverpool.
one. They went for Ekitike, they went for Sesko, they went for João Pedro, they went for Mbumo, they went for Cunha. They were, they've turned their heads to so many people, and they've lost out on every single one.
It is soul destroying though, because I remember, some Spurs transfer windows where we had gone in, especially probably the Gareth Bale, and there were so many names mentioned, and it was like this person, no, this no, and then you end up with Chadley, you know what I mean, who's fucking ninth down the list of people you wanted in that position. It's like, it is really, really hard, and I think where Newcastle have done well when you look at them over the last couple of years is a lot of it has been either local players within the team or, players that have come through that will die for that shirt. And that has given them that extra 5% or whatever because they care about the team. So they've put that bit in there. And I think where they're going to struggle now is what they need is those quality assets. Those players that can, do that bit of magic, that can, win a game, that are going to be consistent and do it. And I see now at the state that they're at, I think they're going to have a real hard time next year, and especially trying to balance European football, league football, cup football. It's a lot of games. It's a lot of travel.
I think they're probably, out of the top 5 leagues, they're probably the weakest team going into the Champions League. Mm-hmm. I think I'm quite comfortable saying that.
Yeah.
You look at even some of the smaller teams that are going to be in the Champions League, in terms of the German teams. Dortmund and Leverkusen, I think, is the other one. You've got Inter Milan, you've got all these teams. They're all better than Newcastle. They've all got, I would say, probably, if not one world class player, then someone who's very close to world class. And I don't think Newcastle United, if they lose Isak, they don't have any world class players. They don't have any. They don't have a focal point.
No, they don't.
They've got some very good players. Bruno G is a fantastic player. Joe Linton on his day is a great player. Gordon's a good player on his day. They've just signed Elanga, who is a very good player. But you look at the aspirations of, let's use Man United again. Man United identified exactly what they needed. They needed a striker. They need 2 10s. They need a centre midfielder and a goalkeeper. They're going to complete that. And they're going to fill all the hole. They will. They will. I'm convinced they will.
Yeah.
Whether it's Belieber and Donnarumma or whether it's Lamans and Edison, or do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter. They will fill those gaps. I don't think Newcastle are good. Whoever they sign now, I don't think they're getting stronger. I think they're getting weaker because
I can't see, unless they pull someone out of the woodwork, unless they pull someone that I can't see or think. This is what I mean. I just can't see who's there to buy. I mean, that is going to make that team better. That is not going to be a stopgap. It's going to be Richarlison for us. When we signed Richarlison, it was never. I mean, we spent probably too much money on him, but he was never going to be Harry Kane's replacement, and be. It was, we had to get a striker. And, that is what it feels like for Newcastle, is they are panicking and they are going to just be overpaying and have to just try and take whatever scraps is available. But on a side note, the news, Maddison. So Maddison is going for surgery.
Yeah.
Ruptured ACL.
Yeah, he's out for the season before it's even started.
I would say, it's probably going to be a 6-month, 8-month sort of situation. My question to you, do you think we need to replace him? Or, I know you probably don't know much of the Spurs squad, but in my head, I feel quite comfortable.
No, I think you need someone, because...
And do you think Grealish, I have just read that there is a talk of a loan move for Grealish.
I wouldn't touch Grealish with a 10-foot barge pole. He has been so underwhelming for the last 3 years, 4 years.
Well, since the City move.
No, I think in his first season for City, he was okay because he was allowed to do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And that is, isolate himself on the left wing, cut in, do all the things that he was doing at Villa. The thing is, as soon as they realised that he wasn't going to be a talisman for that team, they didn't play to his strengths anymore, and he got isolated. In the same way, I don't think Spurs are going to build a team around Jack Grealish.
It would have to be
understandably. So I don't think he is not the answer. But the thing is, they do need an answer because you've lost Son.
Yeah,
is I think a good deal. He's 33 and you've sold him for 20 million. I think that's a decent chunk for him.
I'm just happy he got go where he wanted to go.
You've lost Maddison. Mm-hmm. He's as good as not here for the season.
Kulusevski's still injured.
Kulusevski's injured. You've signed Kudus, but I don't think Kudus is I don't think he's the quality of someone like Son.
Not Son.
So it's a bit like Newcastle where you need that focal point. You need someone to build the team around, and I don't think Spurs have that at the minute.
I think obviously Romero, I believe, is going to be captain. I believe that's where they're going. I think that's a very interesting choice. I love his passion. I love his desire. He does have a temper, which can be detrimental.
Walking red card.
Yeah, he can have that in, and I think if you're going to be captain and leader, you would have had it with Roy Keane. He was a bit of a nutcase at times, and
we've got one now in Martinez.
Yeah,
but you need that sort of mentality.
You do, but I think you also need to know when to say, we need to be smart, not just start kicking people. So I hope that comes with him. He's a bit older now, hopefully a bit wiser. But I think for me is I just hope we don't sign people that limit the chances for people like Archie Gray, for your Bergvals in there. You've got.
Where are your goals coming from?
Well, you've got. Obviously you're going to have Mattis Tell. Wasn't prolific.
No, I don't. And
this is my concern. Is I did hear a rumor of Rodrigo from Real Madrid as a replacement for Son. I don't see how that deal gets done. I've heard they did go to Madrid with an offer of 98 million euros,
which is insane.
I've not seen anything confirmed on that, so I don't know how true it is. But I think for me, I'm still concerned up top. I liked Solanke. I thought his all-round play was pretty good, but at the end of the day, he's always going to get judged on goals. And I just don't think there was enough there.
He was never a prolific striker.
Yeah.
He was never a 20-goal-a-season striker. And it comes back to that thing I've been saying the whole time, is you shouldn't sign a player based on one good season.
No.
You shouldn't. Well, I don't mean that inherently.
Sometimes you've got to take a chance, but
sometimes you have, and I think that But I don't think what you should do is put all your eggs in the basket of a player who's only had one good season. Because you could say that about Mbeumo.
Yeah.
He's been good, solid for Brentford for years, but a really good sort of generational season that warrants a £65 million transfer. He's probably only had 1.5 seasons. But they're not focusing on him. They've also signed Sesko and Cunha, and they're not relying on him, which takes the pressure off. Because when you have a £70 million price tag on your head, it puts pressure on you. Look what happened to Anthony.
Yeah,
he had an £80 million or 80 million euro, whatever it was, price tag on his head. So everyone's expecting fucking some generational talent to come in and immediately start playing well. And while I don't agree with that sentiment, and I do think that Anthony, given a bit more time and a bit more confidence in his game, could have been a good player. I mean, look what happened at Betis.
I think you've got to free him up.
But the thing is,
you've got to just let him play.
Again, he's not the sort of player you want to build a team around. No. And I think that his game relies on, a bit like Grealish, a lot of isolation, a lot of taking players on, a lot of freedom to do what he wants. When you're in a regimented system like Amarim's is, you have a job to do, I can do it. It doesn't allow those sorts of players to express themselves properly, which you could see as a detriment.
You need to free them up, don't you?
I don't think it's a detriment if the whole thing works. The best teams in history have a very regimented system. You look at Barcelona with the tiki-taka stuff. You look
But
at
then you
Pep's.
did have then Messi with the ability to float to multiple. Ronaldinho floated from multiple
But it was
positions.
part of the system.
It was, and that's
Because
what I
they
mean.
played a false nine.
You would have to free Anthony up to allow him to drift, move, and not be. We've seen it with Salah sometimes at Liverpool. You don't want Salah having to be back defending.
No.
And doing that job of chasing back, and that sometimes you need him to be. And if that means, why Firmino was so good there, because he would come back.
Yeah, Firmino was a facilitator.
So he would come back, which allowed Salah that freedom and Mane that freedom to then express. And I think, the one striker that I don't think has really been mentioned this transfer window, and maybe it's because he's categorically not for sale, is Julian Alvarez at Atletico Madrid.
Well, he's only been there a year, isn't he? He was their second highest signing ever.
I rate that man so highly. He's someone that, if I was Newcastle and let's say they get 150 for Isak, that would be the person, that I would probably go and say, look, here's 130, or whatever. Because I think that man will get you goals. I think he's an animal. I would love to see him in a Spurs shirt, But I generally think with Spurs, I think we're a couple of signings away, and I appreciate obviously it's Thomas Frank's first transfer window. The chances you get everything you need in one transfer window, I don't think it's fair. It's for me, it's 4. To get people out, to get people in, and
having transfer windows like what Man United are currently having are rare.
Yeah.
I don't think even Man United have done it for 6-7 years,
and they've still not completed it. Because there could be a chance that they don't get a goalkeeper, they don't get another centre mid, or they don't get the right person, or whatever. So,
every transfer is a risk, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't know what player you're getting.
But yeah,
I think that they've made the safest choices they could.
I think you've done very well at taking, a few from the Premier League that were very good last season, and at that age point where they're not young, they're not old, they're in.
Mbumo's 25, Cunha's 26.
Yeah, they're in that position where you could comfortably 5-year deal, absolutely fine, and I think that probably cost them a little bit more in wages, but someone like Mbumo, I mean, I appreciate you giving 190 grand a week or whatever, but I think that took people that appreciate it, not.
Well, there's that, but also you've got to look at it in relativity with what they were paying people already. So if it is 190 grand he's on, I'm not 100%. It might be 200, it might be 180. I'm not sure. But to put that in perspective, as of 2 years ago, and they're still paying them this, Maguire's on 190, Anthony's on 200. This is the sort of player that they were paying that money to 3 years ago. This is the sort of money they're paying to these players now. And I think that is bringing it, as mad as this sounds, bringing it under control. They're not going to go out and sign a player and put them on 350 grand a week, which is what they were doing for so long. De Gea was on that, Rashford was on that, Casemiro is on that.
What's Mount on?
250 or 235 or something like that. Over 200.
A lot, isn't it?
It is a lot. It is a lot.
I didn't realise it was
if they got the player that was Chelsea's Player of the Year 3 years on the bounce, then he would be worth it.
Possibly,
it's a risk.
Yeah, 100%.
But they signed him unbeknownst to a degenerative hip injury.
Yeah.
Or whatever he's got. I don't know if it's degenerative, but it's a reoccurring hip injury, which is why he's injured all the time. They didn't know that when they signed him.
Did that not flag in the medical?
How the fuck he got through a medical, I don't know. But
it's bizarre, isn't it?
When Man United have supposedly got one of the best medical teams in the league and they didn't spot it, or they thought it wasn't a problem. I don't know. But he has this reoccurring injury. But this is what I mean: is you're not signing him was a risk, but signing anyone is a risk. They could spend all this money on Mbumo and Cunha, and they could be shit.
Yeah.
I don't think they will be, but they could be. You don't know. In the same way that Spurs could sign Jude Bellingham.
Yeah.
He could be shit. You don't know. You just don't know how they're going to perform because there's so many outside factors. You got to think of the moving country. Moving your family over here. It takes time you know, when people say you've got to give them a season to settle, that doesn't mean settle into the football necessarily. There's other things that they need to settle into and get their head in the right
Language,
place.
you know, you look with some of these players, you know, that don't even speak English and stuff like that. It's very difficult. You've also got a lot of them now will be bringing families with them, which means kids are then moving schools with a new language, you know, and we all know, you know, kids at school, it can be difficult at times, you know, and kids can be difficult. So having that outside of it, you know, there's a lot of things that go on that go unnoticed in it, but I think so. Who do you think has had the best transfer window
Liverpool.
currently?
Yeah, definitely Liverpool, because they had the definition of fuck you money. Do you know what I mean? They've played a masterstroke in being very frugal for a few years,
It's
and then
what they do.
selling very well, and then buying incredibly well. I mean, the calibre of player they've signed, they've filled holes that they needed to fill with Trent and Robbo and all that. They've filled them, and then they've just spunked
Exploded.
money on players that are going to improve. But they're not relying on them, because they've still got Salah, they've still got, you know, McAllister, they've still got Gravenberch. They haven't lost anything.
Yeah.
They've lost things they could afford to lose in people like Luis Diaz and people like that, and Kelleher and all that sort of stuff. But they've bought players who are at least as good as who they've lost, and
If not better.
in most cases they're better.
Yeah.
I think if Man United get all the signings that, whether it be Donnarumma or Belieber, or whether it be this Lamans.
Do you think Belieber is the one though? Like I as I said, I don't know enough about him. I don't know what his is. He centre mid? Is he CDM? Is he box to box?
He's more of an 8 than a 6, but you know he's big, he's strong, he's young, he's quick, and
Nice.
I think
all the
you
things
need,
I like.
Yeah, you need to take a little bit of a risk. You can't rely on 27-year-olds constantly, and I think that, you know, unlike the striker situation, you have Mason Mount, you have Casemiro, you have Ugarte, you have Bruno, all these players that can instill their wisdom and their experience on a player like Belieber, and I think that it will be an easier thing to slot into.
Yeah.
You know, he's got someone there in Kobe Mainu who's about the same age. You know, they can learn together, they can gel, and you know that could be a centre mid pairing that we see for another 15 years.
Yeah.
So I think it is a risk. Of course it's a risk. When you're spending what's looking like is going to be 80 to 100 million pounds on a 21, 22-year-old, whatever I think he's 21, it's always a risk. Of course it's a risk.
It's a lot of money.
But for every El Shaarawy, there's a Wayne Rooney. Do you know what I mean? He could fall on either side of that coin. You don't know. But
all you can judge is on what you can see, isn't it? And the conversations
he's coming into
with
a
the player.
team. He's coming into a team that's going to give him the best opportunity to do well compared to the Man United teams we've seen over the last 5 years.
Yeah, and I think, it is a bit frustrating because, you know, I think from a Spurs point, with the manager change and with everything that's going on, it was a very slow sort of start to the transfer window. It then picked up a bit, you know, with obviously some of the loan signs coming, you know, getting brought on, and then a few other bits and pieces. I think Morgan Gibbs-White is going to now looks like a loss. You know, obviously, you know, him signing a new deal, not getting that deal over the line.
Definitely wasn't forced to do that if you saw the interview.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Marinakis. Thank you.
Please, can I have some more? Yeah, was a very interesting thing. And I think, you know, obviously with Maddison, because if that deal was done, it doesn't matter that, well, of course it matters that Maddison gets injured, but it's not as bad. I still think we have enough cover there. I would like to see more up top. I think that, you know, to either...
That's where you've lost the most, so it's where you need to gain the most.
You know, and I just think, you know, from the midfield that we've got, I think, you know, we find... At the back, we find Danzo coming in, Vuskovic, who looks like he could be sensational.
You got that young Japanese kiddie as well, haven't you?
Yes. Whether he'll go out on loan. We've also got the other Asian lad, the winger, who I believe will be staying, that we signed sort of middle of last season. He went back on loan to finish out the season in the J League or whatever it is out there. He looks really good. He is quick. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name because that will not go down well. So I think there are, but I just think what we need now is those little bits of. We've got a lot of young, Bergvall, Gray, the young Asian lad, Matthias Tell, obviously I think still 22, something like that. There's a lot of youth in there, and I think you just need one or two, like what you've done in Brumo, Cunha. We need one or two of those players that can that are good, exciting players. Maybe another winger for Son. I would like, if Richarlison leaves, and then look at, another striker to really push Solanke. Because I think that would be the true test, wouldn't it? If you could have someone that could compete, maybe Solanke comes good. I mean, he's still got time. He's only, 26, I think? 27?
Whatever he is.
Yeah, so I think he's at that point now where he's going to be coming good, and we're going to see, the best of him. But I think, just a few more sign-ins, and I think we could be good. I think the one thing we got this year is just try and not get all of our players injured, and it looks like it started well. You've got obviously players still out, and you need them back. Obviously, hopefully, Kulusevski will be back soon. He's just recovering from surgery at the end of last season, so it's not a fresh injury. It's time that had already been planned for him to be off. I think the Maddison one hurts, but if we can not lose anyone, especially at the back, Romero and Van der Ven, you keep them fit, and then rotate them with Danzo, Vuskovic, Ben Davis is gonna, I think, have a big part to play. It's crazy. Ben Davis has been there 13 years now. It's a long time.
He's gone.
No, he's still there. It's going to be an exciting season, I think.
It's all looking up.
Who's your prediction for top four currently?
Liverpool, City, Arsenal, Chelsea.
Ooh.
In that order.
Yeah. I think it's hard to...
I can't see Gyökeres doing as well as what they need.
I watched him last night.
I didn't.
He was pretty woeful. Honestly, me and my son watched it. We like seeing Arsenal lose. So we watched it against Villarreal, and he missed sitters. Missed a lot. But, obviously, first full game, and you're...
Fucking irony if Sesko does better after they turned him down.
Yeah,
Or he turned them down, whichever
Yeah,
way
he didn't look good. But, I mean, there's always question marks over Gyökeres just for his ability in big games, his, a lot of penalties and stuff like that. So I, personally hope he doesn't do well, just because I don't want Arsenal to do well. But it's a shame because I really like Gyökeres. He's just ruined it for me now.
And on that note,
See you next time.